Um, If you're participating by phone, you're muted at the moment. You can unmute yourself by pressing *6. There's one number, the area code's 956, and the last three digits are 669. Could you unmute yourself and confirm who you are so that I can refer to you appropriately?
Yes, it's Antonio Soto.
All right, thank you. That's what I was hoping. All right, so Mr. Soto is present, and there's also someone participating by phone. The area code's 210, and the last three digits are 124. Can you unmute yourself and let me know who you are? You can do that by pressing *6.
Yes. This is his fiance.
This is who?
Antonio Soto. Beatrice Bernal.
Beatrice Bernal. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I'll go ahead and mute you on the phone.
This meeting is being recorded.
Just going to mute. All right. At this time, the court is going to call cause number 22-04-0217. In the interest of Autumn, we are set today for a final trial in this case, and the court will recognize that the department is present, represented this afternoon by Ms. Leslie Levi, and joined by Ms. Vanessa De Los Santos. And we also have Alexandra Vanderbilt present as well. In addition, we have Miss Alana Pearsall present. She's the attorney for the respondent mother, Elsa Marie Smith. Ms. Smith is not present, but we did address her status in the case at the last hearing when we commenced the trial, and addressed her participation in the case. Mr. Michael Finkel is here. He is the attorney for the respondent father, Antonio Soto Jr. Mr. Soto is present, participating by phone. In addition, Ms. Anna Swallow is here. She is the attorney and guardian ad litem for the child. And we have some additional other parties present as well, potential, I think, additional witnesses, I imagine. So thank you all for being here and being ready to proceed. As I indicated earlier, we started this trial. It commenced the trial, and we reset to today to address Mr. Soto because he couldn't, he was not present, and we needed to ensure his presence, and he is present. So I think we can get started and proceed. Ms. Levi, are you ready?
Yes, Your Honor, the state is ready.
Really quickly, I do think I need to address something before we get started. Mr. Soto wrote a letter, addressed it to this court. It arrived here earlier this week, I think on Monday. And I believe we filed that and sent it to all parties. Okay. All right. So Miss Virginia, my coordinator, has circulated that to all of you just to ensure that it was not ex parte communications. It was received here, and you should all have a copy. If you don't, will you let us know?
The department received it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Then, all right. So we'll go ahead. Who would you like to call as your first witness, Ms. Levi?
Your Honor, I'd like to start with Ms. Vanderbilt.
Ms. Levi, you may proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Vanderbilt, could you state your name for the record?
Alexandra Vanderbilt.
And how are you currently employed?
I am an investigator with Child Protective Services out of Atascosa County.
How are you connected with this case?
I completed the removal actually of both of Miss Elsa Smith's children. The first one being in April of 2021 and the second one being April of 2022.
What was that referral in April of 2021?
And a referral came in alleging that Mr. Soto had led law enforcement on a chase through a neighborhood.
I'm going to object to the relevance of the prior case. It doesn't pertain to this one.
Your Honor, I think it's highly relevant. It goes to a pattern of conduct that directly impacted why we removed the child in this case.
I am going to overrule that objection. And you may continue, Ms. Levi, and answer the question, Ms. Vanderbilt.
So there were allegations that Mr. Soto had led law enforcement on a chase through the neighborhood, and when he stopped the vehicle, he had jumped out and had a modified firearm on him. He is a convicted felon at that point, and then he led law enforcement on a foot chase, allegedly admitted to law enforcement that he was under the influence of methamphetamines, and then the car smelled heavily of marijuana.
Was anyone else?
I object to all the hearsay.
You're under 804, I believe 5, there's a hearsay exception for reports made in the course of investigations by government agents.
And that objection is overruled.
What did you do when you first responded to that report?
So first, to answer your question about anybody else being in the vehicle, Ms. Elsa Smith and her daughter were in the vehicle.
I'm sorry, did you say something, Ms. Pearsall?
Objection, non-responsive. She was answering a totally different question than the one asked.
Your Honor, I have asked both questions, but I would object to Ms. Pearsall making objections since she was excused from this hearing and her client's rights aren't at play.
I was going to make the same objection, Your Honor. As far as I know, Ms. Pearsall was excused when you ruled on her client's case before.
You know, I haven't seen the order terminating my client if I'm incorrect. But I don't think there's been an order entered as far as my client.
There may not have been a written order. At the last hearing, though, we directly addressed Ms. Smith's relinquishment, and the court did terminate based on the relinquishment. I mean, I know you weren't here. I think you had another attorney filling in for you, but I mean, I did dismiss you as we did address that. We did address her portion of the case on that day and reset to address Mr. Soto's today. So, I mean, I'm happy to allow you to participate, but I think we've addressed her issues completely.
I'm fine being excused. I know Ms. Levy and I discussed this case after the last thing we kind of discussed we were on the same side.
Yeah.
So I was under the impression she wanted me to appear today, but if the court wants to excuse me, I'm more than fine with that.
All right. Well, I think we've addressed your client completely. So you are excused. I mean, I have within my notes from the last setting that the court terminated the parent-child relationship pursuant to section 161.001B1K and pursuant to the Rule 11 agreement. And the case was reset solely today, solely to address Mr. Soto's role in the case. So I think we've completely addressed your client. You are dismissed. And if you would like to be excused, you may be.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. All right. So if we can we pick up where we left off? Ms. Levi.
Ms. Vanderbilt, what did you do when you responded to that intake?
I made contact with Miss Elsa Smith and her daughter Amelia at their residence and discussed the intake with her as well as the case history and the concerns. I did observe the vehicle. It did still smell strongly of marijuana. Mr. Soto was not there at the time, and I was not able to meet with him in person. I was able to get him on the phone the following day, but I was never able to directly address the allegations with him.
And what did he say when you got him on the phone? Why were you unable to address those allegations?
He was refusing to meet with me, wanted to delay the meeting. He had some choice words calling himself a POS, or I don't I don't know if I can say in open court what that stands for, but he was saying that he knows his demons, that he's an addict and that he needed help. I told him that we would be more than willing to help them, and that was our goal, is to get them help for the sake of Amelia.
And just so the record is clear, is Mr. Soto Amelia's father?
He is not.
Okay, he is the father of the child. In this case, Autumn, is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding, yes.
And both children have the same mother.
Correct. And Ms. Smith was pregnant with Autumn during this removal.
So even though he wasn't a party to the last case, am I understanding you correctly that you told Mr. Soto that the department would set him up with services so that he and Ms. Smith could be together for the benefit of Amelia as well?
Correct. Miss Smith had given Amelia Mr. Soto's last name, and he had every intention of, or indicated every intention of, raising Amelia as his own, in addition to her being pregnant with his child.
During the course of that investigation, did Mr. Soto ever take you up on the offer of addressing that methamphetamine use and that drug use?
He did not.
Did you have any indications that there were any other issues with this family other than the methamphetamine use?
There were concerns for domestic violence. Law enforcement reported there had been a hang-up call from the residents from a female being locked in a closet. Initially, Ms. Smith denied domestic violence, but during the PCSP placement of Amelia into a fictive kin's home, she admitted that there had been.
Now, I know that you were only part of that case for the initial investigation, but was there anything done by Mr. Soto during that investigation to address that domestic violence concern?
No, ma'am.
Did he say anything to you that would acknowledge or address that? Did he discuss it with you at all?
No, ma'am.
Now, you mentioned that there was another removal. Or let me ask first, was that the end of your involvement at that time?
Effectively, yes.
The department filed for removal of Amelia in conservatorship case.
Yes, we did a non-emergency removal at that time.
When did you become involved with this family again?
A little over a year later, in the same month, April 2022.
And what happened in April 2022 that brought you back on the scene?
Miss Smith had called law enforcement reporting that her daughter had been kidnapped. And then law enforcement also got a report that Miss Smith had been in a car accident. When they arrived on scene, she was intoxicated. And the children had to be released to, Amelia had to be released to Mr. Soto's mother, as Autumn was already off scene by the time law enforcement got there.
Okay, so let's break this down just a little bit. Are you aware of what had happened with the initial CPS case in between your first involvement and that second involvement?
At the time we got the re-referral, Amelia had been on a monitored return with Miss Smith.
Okay, so Amelia had originally been removed, but was back with Miss Smith, and you get this intake.
Yes.
I believe you stated that during April of 2021, Autumn had not yet been born. So at this point, Autumn has been born and is also in Miss Smith's custody. Is that accurate?
Correct.
And who is Autumn's father?
Antonio Soto.
Okay. So what did you find out when you went to investigate this removal?
That the children had been released from the scene, that Autumn was already off the scene, and that Amelia had been released to Antonio's mother, and that the on-call worker had spoken with Antonio's mother about not returning the children into Antonio or Elsa's care until contact could be made with an investigator to follow up with the information. However, by the time I made contact, the children were back with Elsa, back with Miss Smith, and I had spoken with the legal worker at the time, and at that point, Amelia was removed from the monitored return, and we made contact with Miss Smith in the parking lot of a DFPS office to address the allegations.
And what did you learn from Miss Smith?
She indicated that Autumn had been with Miss Morales, which is Mr. Soto's mother, the day prior. She said that she had left the child with her. However, we later learned from Miss Morales that wasn't the case, that she did not have the child during the incident, that she only got the child way later that night from Mr. Soto after the law enforcement had been called.
Okay, and what did Miss Smith say happened between her and Mr. Soto that led to this law enforcement involvement?
They had gotten into an argument. I could be wrong. I believe it was about money, and he wanted to take Autumn, and he had left the scene with her, and that's why she told law enforcement that her daughter had been kidnapped.
Were you able to talk to Mr. Soto about this event?
I attempted to, however, he was very hostile on the phone. He would not answer any of my questions. He was very evasive. When I told him the information we had received, he said, oh, really? Oh, really? Or something of that nature, like basically that he was not going to communicate with us or talk with us, and then he hung up on me.
Were you aware of any legal problems facing Mr. Soto at that time?
Yes, there had been a criminal investigation for physical abuse of one of his other children from another relationship. So during this investigation, I did contact I contacted Sergeant Robert Newman at the sheriff's office, who was the one who had investigated that and indicated that charges had been filed with the DA's office.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that. Mr. Finkel, did you?
Objection hearsay to what the investigator said.
Ms. Levi, any response?
Your Honor, I'm not going for the truth of the matter asserted. I'm trying to get to how that impacted Mr. Soto's actions. If you can let me ask one clarifying question that will not be hearsay, I think you'll understand the connection.
Okay. All right, then I'll allow you to do that.
Ms. Vanderbilt, because of those charges, did those charges impact, to your knowledge, Mr. Soto's cooperation or willingness to come discuss the case?
Yes, he would not go to the scene to talk with law enforcement, and he would not meet with me because of them.
Was it your understanding there was an open warrant?
That's my understanding, yes.
Were you able to do any kind of work with him to assess safety, assess appropriateness, or get him to cooperate in any way, shape, or form with that open warrant?
Not at all.
What actions did the department take as a result of Ms. Smith being intoxicated, Mr. Soto having open warrants, and not being cooperative?
We were unable to establish safety with lower interventions. Therefore, we completed an emergency removal of Autumn and placed her in the same placement with Amelia.
Did you have any knowledge of any remedial actions in between that first removal and the second removal that would have alleviated Mr. Soto's admitted substance abuse problem?
Not at all.
Did you have any knowledge of any remedial actions that might have addressed the concerns for domestic violence?
No, ma'am.
And did you have concerns that with an open warrant, there was a chance Mr. Soto wouldn't be around to take care of his children in the near term?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'll pass the witness.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Vanderbilt, if I understood correctly, the first case with Amelia was a year prior to this case with Autumn?
Yes.
All right, and you mentioned concerns about domestic violence, do you have any separate corroborating evidence of domestic violence other than what Ms. Smith told you?
The call to law enforcement, the 911 call to law enforcement.
Okay, who made that 911 call?
It was an unknown female. There was no answer at the residence once law enforcement got there.
Okay, so that really doesn't play into anything if there's nobody that could talk about
Objection, sidebar.
I'll sustain. Do you want to rephrase your question, Mr. Finkel?
what information were you able to gather from that 911 call? Was it able to be investigated and followed up on?
That information indicated that there was possible domestic violence in the home that we needed to look into.
Okay, and what evidence did you find that corroborated that 911 call?
We didn't, but we were also not able to address it with Mr. Soto.
Okay, so the answer is you weren't able to find any corroborating evidence.
Correct.
For this case, from what I understand in your testimony is Mr. Soto's involvement was that he supposedly kidnapped his child. Is that correct?
No, that's what Ms. Smith had alleged, which was part of the intake, but we did not determine that he had kidnapped a child by definition.
So other than that, he wasn't around or involved in this referral, correct?
He was caring for Autumn.
Right, but that wasn't the reason for the referral.
Correct.
You said that that Mr. Soto took the child or the children, was it both children or just Autumn, to Ms. Morales?
It was Autumn. Law enforcement released Amelia to Ms. Morales.
Okay. And how was it that that Mr. Soto took Autumn to Ms. Morales?
I don't know.
Was that done at the request of the department?
No, absolutely not.
Okay,
Ms. Morales has qualifying department history.
thank you. Let's see. So when you contacted Mr. Soto regarding this case, are you saying that you weren't able to gather any information from him?
Correct.
And what were the specific reasons then for seeking a removal?
Because we have concern for history of ongoing drug use that had not been addressed by Mr. Soto from the case where Amelia was removed, as well as the past CPS case, and that he had an active warrant for physical abuse to one of his other children, and that nothing had been done to alleviate concerns or create safety.
Do you know if Mr. Soto was able to give any information to any other caseworkers?
No, that would have to be a question for other caseworkers.
Okay. So as far as Mr. Soto is concerned, you and the department were just concerned because of concerns that you had a year ago or a year prior to that, correct?
No, it was ongoing. The investigation into the physical abuse occurred after the removal of Amelia, indicating that there was yet another concern that needed to be addressed that had not been addressed.
What was that? You're talking about the warrant at that point?
Correct.
Okay. And did you ever confirm if there was a warrant and what that was for?
Yes, I spoke to Sergeant Robert Newman with the sheriff's office about it.
But as far as any direct harm to Autumn in this case, there was none. Isn't that true?
Can you reword your question, please?
Was there any direct harm caused to Autumn in this case by Mr. Soto?
No, but danger isn't necessarily defined by direct harm. It's also defined by not being able to mitigate any dangerous circumstances that places the child at a continued risk of danger.
Okay, but none of those risks that you've identified were directed or happened to Autumn, did they?
No, but Autumn is an infant and too young to protect or care for herself. Therefore, they do directly impact her.
Okay, if they in fact were true. Correct. And so you mentioned drug use. So how would his alleged or even admitted drug use affect Autumn if it wasn't, or is there a way that the department determined that it affected Autumn?
He admitted to the drug use. If he wouldn't come in and test and alleviate that, that's a different matter.
Okay, but again, none of these things that you had concerns about, Mr. Soto, had a direct impact on Autumn, did they?
I mean, I would argue that they did.
Okay, how so?
Again, Autumn is a vulnerably aged infant who is not able to care for herself. Being under the influence of methamphetamines or any other mind-altering substance would impact his ability to care for her. There was the situation where obviously his judgment was impacted, where he led law enforcement on a chase with another vulnerably aged child in the car. I mean, they directly impact Autumn.
What you're saying is those are all fears that the department had that could impact Autumn. Correct?
I would not call them fears.
Concerns?
They're definitely concerning, and they were ongoing concerns.
Okay, but again, none of those concerns, do you have any evidence of coming to fruition and actual harm because of Mr. Soto's drug use or because of Mr. Soto's judgment that that affected Autumn, even though she was an infant and couldn't protect herself? All the more reason that if there was anything done, you would know about it, correct?
We have no physical evidence because Mr. Soto refused to meet with the department or do anything to address or alleviate the issue.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll pass it.
Ms. Vanderbilt, how long have you been employed with the department?
Almost 4 years.
And how long have you been investigating?
The entire time.
Okay, and if nothing has changed and nothing has been addressed by Mr. Soto in regards to mitigating the department's concerns from getting involved in the first place, would you think it would be in this child's best interest to not terminate parental rights?
Sorry, your wording is a little confusing. Just the last part.
Do you think it's in this child's best interest if the parental rights of Mr. Soto remain intact, if he has done nothing to mitigate the department's concerns, which caused the removal in the first place?
No, I don't think it's in the child's best interest.
Thank you. I pass the witness.
Just briefly. Can you remind me again what Ms. Smith told you happened before she called law enforcement?
She indicated at the second removal. Okay. She indicated that there was a altercation of sorts with Mr. Soto, and that he had forcibly taken Autumn from her.
And where did that altercation take place?
That would have been in San Antonio near the motel that law enforcement was called to, where the car had some popped tires and some damage to it.
So, but this was a physical altercation, or it became physical in some way?
That's what Ms. Smith indicated.
At least some evidence that there was a physical altercation with an infant, presumably in the arms of one of these parents.
There was a statement of that. As far as evidence goes, I wasn't able to independently corroborate it.
Okay, but a witness statement would be evidence.
Yes.
So based on your training and experience, is an altercation with a newborn physically in the middle of it, does that endanger that child?
Yes, domestic violence is actually one of the most dangerous to children under the age of 3 because it's unpredictable, because they can be hurt, especially when they're in the direct vicinity of it.
And I believe that you stated that Miss Smith was intoxicated at the time. Do you
Correct.
have any evidence to believe that Mr. Soto had stopped using substances at that time?
I have no evidence to indicate that he wasn't using, no.
And would one or both parents being intoxicated make that physical altercation with all children present even more dangerous?
Yes, it would.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Finkel?
Yes, a few follow-up. You indicated that you didn't have any evidence that Mr. Soto wasn't using. Do you have any evidence that Mr. Soto was under the influence at that time?
No, again, Mr. Soto would not meet with us.
Okay. And you indicated that Mrs. Smith was in fact intoxicated at that time, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is it possible that because of her intoxication, she might have exaggerated the events as they occurred?
I don't feel qualified to speak to that. I wasn't at the scene. Things happen to people when they're under the influence all the time. I mean, I can't say that she exaggerated something just because she was under the influence.
Okay. At the same time, you're qualified and you take her word as fact as far as any kind of domestic violence occurred or might have occurred.
Independently, I had never said I took her word as fact. We do have concern because there was a hang-up call from the residents by Miss Smith to law enforcement.
When you say that there was an altercation or physical altercation, what did she say exactly with regards to that?
Without having my affidavit directly in front of me, I wouldn't be able to quote her.
Oh, that could have been, you're speculating as far as it being incident of domestic violence or any kind of physical altercation. The physical altercation could just be that he took the child, correct?
Any physical altercation is of concern in the presence of an infant, so I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay, who used the words physical altercation?
Miss Smith.
Okay, and I thought you said earlier that they were arguing over money.
I mean, that's how the argument started. I mean, you can have an argument and things can happen. They can evolve.
Okay. Are you testifying that that's what happened in this case? You don't know, do you?
I am testifying to what we were told by Miss Smith.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll pass away.
Ms. Vanderbilt, not only are you testifying to what, did we lose someone? To what you heard from Ms. Smith, you also did an independent investigation and evaluation of Mr. Soto, correct?
I attempted to do an independent investigation. I was never able to fully complete my investigation with Mr. Soto because he would never avail himself to the department.
But your investigation included speaking to more people besides Ms. Smith, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the removal and the circumstances that brought this child into care go far beyond what Ms. Smith may or may not have told you, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I pass the witness.
All right, Ms. Levi, you ready to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd call Ms. Juarez. Please state your name for the record.
F. Juarez.
And Ms. Juarez, how are you connected with this family?
I was the caseworker for the Autumn Soto case and for the Amelia Soto case.
And when did you stop being the primary caseworker on this case?
August of 2022.
So I'd like to start with Amelia's case. You heard Ms. Vanderbilt testify that she offered to set Mr. Soto up with services. Did you extend that offer once conservatorship took over the case?
Yes, I did.
And were you able to talk to Mr. Soto about that?
Yes, I was.
Was he fully aware that you would set him up with domestic violence counseling, drug treatment, all of that kind of stuff?
Yes.
Did he ever take you up on any of those offers for services?
No, he did not. He was worried about his other children, and if he admitted to using drugs or alcohol or anything like that, or any other admissions, he was worried he would lose custody of his other children.
Was he a primary caretaker for those children?
No.
To your knowledge, how many children does Mr. Soto have?
I believe 6 altogether.
And you said he is not the primary caregiver for any of them?
No.
Did he make any sort of admissions concerning drug usage to you?
Yes.
What did he say to you?
When I initially met with him, I believe it was in June of 2021, not long after Amelia's case came in. The house smelled of marijuana when I met with him and Miss Soto, and I'm sorry, Miss Smith, and he admitted that he had just smoked marijuana before coming. He stated that he often used methamphetamines, but he had been clean from that for a while, but he did use synthetic marijuana to ease some of the anxiety and some of the mental health stuff that he had going on, that it did help calm him.
Did he ever perform a drug test for you to verify that he had stopped using that methamphetamines?
Not during the first case with Amelia, he did not.
Did you explain to him that for him to be around Amelia, for him to be a parent to the child they were expecting, he would need to do some of that work in some of those services to show that he was safe and stable?
Yes, that was made very clear to him and to Miss Smith.
Did you hear, did Mr. Soto ever say anything to you concerning domestic violence during that case?
Mr. Soto did not.
Your Honor, may I share my screen, please?
Yes. Let me give you. You should be able to now.
I'm showing you what has not yet been marked, but will be marked as Petitioner's Exhibit 6. Do you recognize this photo?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
Miss Smith had sent it to me and stated that Antonio had hit her.
Is this a fair and accurate depiction of the photo as it was sent to you?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would like to offer Petitioner's Exhibit 6.
Any objections?
I would object, Your Honor, is hearsay and not properly authenticated. She testified that this picture was sent to her by somebody else, and so there's no way for her to authenticate the photograph for that reason.
Your Honor, that's not part of the predicate. All she has to testify is that what it is what was sent to her, and that goes to the weight, not the admissibility.
And it's shown for the proof of the matter asserted.
I'm going to sustain your objection. I don't think I can admit that under the current predicate that's been laid. You can move on to your next question.
Did Miss Smith ever disclose domestic violence between her and Mr. Soto?
Yes, she did. She did on several occasions.
And what did she say to you?
She stated after her and Antonio had broken up, she stated that she had made that phone call to law enforcement from the closet. She was scared of him and she hung up because he was coming in after her. She stated that there was multiple times that he hit her. She also seen him, I believe, hit her Amelia.
Did she ever send you photos of injuries that she claimed were inflicted by Mr. Soto?
She did.
Were those photos, were the injuries serious enough to have drawn blood?
Yes, they were.
During the first case, what, if anything, did Mr. Soto do to ameliorate the concerns for domestic violence?
He did not participate in any services.
Did he participate in any services for the drug use that he admitted to Ms. Vanderbilt?
No.
Did you ever look at Mr. Soto's social media?
Yes.
What type of photos? Did you have any concerns for the type of photos posted on his social media?
Yes.
What were those concerns?
He was often seen with different firearms. He had tattoos representing gang affiliation. There were some serious concerns about him and his attitude even, and he doesn't care, stuff like that. I don't want to use the exact verbiage that was on there, but to that extent.
Now, during the first case, because he wasn't the biological father, is it fair to say that the court could not order him to complete services?
Correct.
During the second case, when he was the biological father, did you create a service plan for Mr. Soto?
A service plan was actually created for Mr. Soto in the initial case, as he was alleged father and until DNA testing was completed. So he did have a service plan, and it was gone over with him, I believe.
I'm showing you what's been marked as Petitioner's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, ma'am.
What is it?
This is the family plan of service that was created for Mr. Soto.
And this is from Autumn's case, the second case.
That's correct.
And is this a fair and accurate version of the service plan that you created for Mr. Soto?
Yes, ma'am.
And if we scroll all the way to the bottom here, I believe that has your signature, your supervisor's signature, and even Mr. Soto's signature.
That's correct.
Your Honor, I would offer Petitioner's Exhibit 1 into evidence, which has been certified by the clerk of the court.
Any objections to petitioners 1?
No objection.
All right, petitioners 1 is admitted.
And Ms. Juarez, I'm showing you what's been marked as Petitioner's Exhibit number 2. Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
And what is this document?
That is the status hearing order for Autumn Soto.
And if we scroll to the bottom, it has been signed by the court and certified by the clerk. And it, in 5.1, makes those service plans in order of this court. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Your Honor, I would offer Petitioner's Exhibit number 2, a certified copy of the status order from this cause.
Any objections to petitioners Exhibit 2?
No
Objection.
If we can go back to Petitioner's Exhibit number 1. What was the first action you asked of Mr. Soto?
The first action, I guess, on there was the parenting class.
While you were the caseworker, which I believe you said was through August of this past year, did Mr. Soto ever complete that parenting class?
He never completed that parenting class, and he was referred to several others due to conflicts in his schedule. There were several referrals sent for parenting classes, and he did not complete any.
And what is the next item on his service plan?
BIP classes with family violence prevention services.
And BIP is batterer's intervention, is that correct?
That is correct.
To your knowledge, or during the time that you had the case, did Mr. Soto ever complete that service?
He did not.
And what was the next item on the service plan?
Complete a psychological evaluation. And he did not complete the psychological or go to individual therapy.
All right. What was the next item on the service plan?
To submit to a drug and alcohol assessment, to complete random drug tests, and to engage in any kind of treatment, residential or outpatient that was recommended.
Did he do any of those services while you had this case?
He did complete an OSAR assessment. He did complete it. I know it was set up several times for him, but he finally did complete it. They referred him to Camino Real substance use program, and he made several contacts with them, but he was never able to go in for the orientation. I offered him a ride several times. He would call and try to set it up, but he never did complete he didn't even start it.
How long was Mr. Soto, incarcerated at any point while you had the case?
I believe so. Actually, I don't believe that he was incarcerated while I had the case. I can't exactly remember. I apologize.
So to your knowledge, he had the opportunity to comply with some of these services prior to being incarcerated.
Yes.
Did he ever tell you what his plan was to deal with the open warrants that Ms. Vanderbilt talked about?
No, he didn't.
Where was Autumn placed when you had this case?
Autumn was placed with a foster parent in San Antonio.
And how was she doing in that placement?
She did well in that placement.
Were you able to observe her in that placement and observe her bond with her caregiver?
I was.
What was your impression of the bond there?
She was extremely bonded to her sister, and she was extremely bonded to both the foster parents in that home, the foster mom and the foster father.
Did you ever observe Mr. Soto at visits with Autumn?
I did.
And what was that bond like?
He was bonded with Autumn as well. I've never seen a dad sit on a couch and hold his baby for 2 hours straight, or I believe it was an hour and a half straight, while she wasn't feeling well. And he did. And she would cuddle right up into him, and there was a bond there as well.
What do you believe is in Autumn's best interest?
I believe it is in Autumn's best interest for parental rights for Mr. Soto to be terminated.
And why is that?
Mr. Soto has not made any changes in his lifestyle or circumstances to mitigate the concerns that we have. He continues to avoid, blame others, just not do what he's supposed to do and not stop using to try to be the best version of himself for his child.
Did he ever take a drug test while you had the case?
Yes, he did.
And were those clean or dirty? What were the
I
results?
believe he was positive for methamphetamines on May 26th of 2022.
I'll pass
And,
it
oh, okay.
Sorry, go ahead. I
I believe I gave him another drug test on the 20th of July, and he was positive at that drug test as well.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Finkel?
Did Mr. Soto ever have any negative drug tests?
I believe he did have a negative drug test on yeah, you know what? I should have looked at my notes. I apologize. Yes, I believe he did on the 5th of May.
Any reason you didn't mention that when you were just asked about drug tests?
I had ordered him to, or I had sent him to a hair follicle and a UA, and he didn't take the hair follicle. He only took the UA. And so the UA was negative.
Was that the only negative drug test?
I'm sorry.
Were there other negative drug tests?
No, those were the only ones. He did avoid drug testing for me several times.
I missed the dates of them, but was that negative drug test after the positive one that you mentioned in May?
No, it was before.
So it's your testimony that the only service that he completed was the OSAR evaluation?
That's correct.
And with regards to the parent-child visit, was that with the one that you just mentioned, was that the only parent-child visit that you observed?
No, I observed 2 parent-child visits, and both he was bonded with with Autumn.
Were his behaviors during those visits appropriate?
During the first visit, he was very worried about the people in the hallway. He was worried about being in the facility. He wanted to go outside. He felt like he was in a prison. He was very nervous during the visit. He kept looking around, seeing who was there. So his behaviors were a little strange. Eventually, once we got into the room, he stood outside of the room and kind of watched Autumn for a while. And he was very nervous about his surroundings. And so his actions were quite strange, but eventually he was able to calm down and spend the quality time with Autumn.
Okay, and I'm referring specifically to his interactions with Autumn. Were those appropriate?
Yes, he did attend to her needs.
Would you consider that important?
Very.
Okay, because the way you answered kind of brushed it off, but
Sorry.
and when did you, how long did you have the case?
For Autumn's case until August of 2022. So from April to August.
Okay.
Right, Ms. Swallow?
Thank you. Ms. Suarez, do you know why Mr. Soto is currently incarcerated?
I'm not sure of his exact charges at this time, why he's incarcerated. No.
Okay. Do you know if Elsa Smith ever sought medical care or hospital care for the injuries she sustained?
I do not know.
Were you ever able to verify that in person any physical injuries on Ms. Smith?
I don't believe so.
Did Ms. Smith ultimately pursue a protective order against Mr. Soto for domestic violence?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And that was out of Atascosa County?
That's correct.
Do you have any reason to believe that Ms. Smith would send you fake photos of injuries?
I don't know.
Do you have any reason to doubt that there was domestic violence between Ms. Smith and Mr. Soto?
No, I do not.
And isn't it true that Ms. Smith would confide in you when these incidents would occur?
Yes.
And isn't it also true that Mr. Soto would confide in you in regards to relapsing and his mental health needs?
Yes.
And when he would do that, would you try to help him?
Yes.
Did he ever take you up on your offers?
He seemed to, but no, he would never finish following through.
At any point in time during the pendency of this case, would you ever think that it would be in this child's best interest to have unsupervised access with Mr. Soto?
Absolutely not.
And in fact, this court at one point suspended his visits until he would engage in services. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And do you remember why those visits were suspended?
I know that he was not attending those visits. I don't believe there was any other reason other than his attendance.
So, and before you were explaining some erratic behavior as well at the visit, correct?
That's correct.
So while he would sit on the sofa and assumingly console this child, his contact with her was inconsistent.
That's correct.
he never availed himself to the services that the department offered him to address his mental health
That's correct.
or his drug use.
Correct.
And you have no reason to believe that he was not actively using methamphetamines.
No, he was using, and he admitted it to me.
So you have admissions and you have drug tests.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar at all with Autumn's current circumstances?
As far as I know, she's placed in a fictive kin home. I have been in that home a few times with the girls in that home.
And she's with her sister
Yes,
and they're very bonded.
extremely.
And do you believe that termination of Mr. Soto's parental rights are in Autumn's best interest?
I do.
And can you explain to the court why?
Yes, again, Mr. Soto has not mitigated any of the concerns. He's not quit using, methamphetamines, marijuana, anything. He's not addressed his mental health, which I think was my main concern over the violence and everything else, because if he could address his mental health, he would be able to, everything else would follow suit. And he was unwilling and unable to do that. And he's not safe for his children to be a part of Autumn's life at all.
Thank you. I pass the witness.
All right.
As far as you mentioned, that Autumn is placed with her sister in a fictive kin home.
That's correct.
Is that the same home that you testified earlier to, that she was bonded with the foster parents?
No, that is a different home.
Okay. Then, first of all, why was she moved from the foster home that you were testifying about?
She was moved because that fictive kin was studied and the home study was approved. And I believe there was a motion to place with that family.
Okay, so what is the relevance of how she was bonded with the foster family that she has been removed from?
I'm not sure, sir. I just answered the questions.
All right, thank you.
I just want to make sure I understood your testimony, Ms. Juarez. You referenced 2 visits that you observed with Mr. Soto and Autumn.
Yes, ma'am.
Were those the only visits he exercised with her, or were there additional visits as well?
There were additional visits. They were set up through KidShare. And he was offered rides to those visits. And he was made well aware of what time and place and everything else those visits were. I believe he only attended 1 visit. He attended 2 visits there. Also, one he was 40 minutes late to, so he only got a 20-minute visit with her. And the other visit was he made on time.
All right. So your testimony is he attended 4 of the scheduled visits that were made available to him, or am I misunderstanding?
That's correct.
4. All
Yes,
right.
Your Honor, I wish to call Ms. De Los Santos. And how are you connected?
I am the current caseworker.
Okay. Now, you were present for the testimony of Ms. Juarez, is that correct?
Yes, I was.
Where we went through every service that is in the court order service plan.
Yes.
In the time after Ms. Juarez has had the case, when you took it over, did Mr. Soto complete any additional services other than what Ms. Juarez discussed?
When I took over the case in October, since October, no, he has not.
Are you aware of where Mr. Soto resides presently?
Yes, currently, yes.
Where is he currently residing?
He is at the Lopez unit in Edinburgh, Texas.
Your Honor, I would offer petitioner's exhibit number 3, which is a certified copy of a conviction for evading arrest.
All right. Which it's petitioners 3.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objections, Mr. Finkel?
Objection, Your Honor.
I would also offer petitioner's exhibit number 4, which is a judgment of conviction for unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon.
All right.
Ms. De Los Santos, these convictions, which I believe sentence was imposed in September, to your knowledge, are these the convictions for which Mr. Soto is currently incarcerated?
To my knowledge, yes.
And what is the sentence date? How long is it anticipated that Mr. Soto will be incarcerated?
6 years.
Do you, in the time that you've had the case, have you anything that would make you think that Mr. Soto can provide a safe, stable home for Autumn?
No, I do not.
Have you seen anything that would rectify the concerns discussed today for domestic violence or drug use in criminal activity?
No.
What do you believe is in Autumn's best interest?
To stay in her placement with her sister.
Have you seen her in this current placement?
Yes, I have.
How is she doing there?
She's doing well. She's bonded with her caregivers and with her sister.
And why do you believe that's in her best interest?
She appears to be happy there. She's adjusted to her placement. She's growing. I've seen a difference from the first time I met her in October till now.
Your Honor, I'll pass the witness.
Are you aware of any services that Mr. Soto has participated in while in custody?
Not that he has begun. I know he told me he got an enrollment packet, but I haven't had any confirmation of services started.
What services did he indicate to you that he was doing?
He said he had received an enrollment packet for a parenting class and the substance abuse. And for UAs, he would have to pay for them himself.
Did you attempt to confirm that with the facility?
Yes, I did.
And what were you able to find out?
I was told that he could send me the information.
But did they confirm that they had those services available?
Do they have the services available? Yes, they have the services.
Now, with regards to Autumn's placement, has any of Mr. Soto's family been considered for possible placement?
Mr. Soto did give me a caregiver list, and he's the first person he wanted me to look into was his father, Antonio Bernal Soto.
Okay, and did you do that?
I did contact Mr. Soto Sr. About that with the translator because he was Spanish speaking, and told him that considering the household that lives there, Miss Rosita Morales lives in the household. And I had told him to let me know whenever she wasn't there so that way we could begin the preliminary.
So what do you mean let her know, let you know when she wasn't there? What does that mean?
When she no longer was residing in the home.
Why did you not want her to reside in the home?
Well, if she were residing in the home, it would be denied
Why is that?
due to past history with Miss Morales in this case.
What do you mean due to past history in this case?
The lack of protection.
Can you elaborate?
In one instance, Miss Morales, I talked to her and she stated that she had been pretty much bullied by Antonio and Elsa to give the children back, to give Autumn and Amelia back to Elsa.
Anything else?
To my knowledge, no, that's what the lack of protection was.
Okay, and that's not something that could have been addressed and talked to her about and told to her, that she needed to be more protective.
Yes, but I couldn't make promises to her. And then she sent me pictures as well of fearing of a car being shot at and I guess keyed.
I'm not exactly sure how that affects her protectiveness.
Well, that was her telling me that that's what she feared was stuff like that happening to her.
In fact, wasn't she being somewhat protective, even though she didn't have the children? She's telling you what her concerns are?
No, those were her, that's what she fears happening if she does have the children and doesn't give the children to Antonio or Elsa when they go to her house.
Okay, be that as it may, you wanted her to move out, to find some other place to live and move out of the home before you even did a preliminary study on Mr. Soto?
Well, the preliminary assessment asks who all lives in the household. And if I were to put Miss Rosa Morales in the household, it's going to be automatically denied.
Okay, so were you able to do any other of the preliminary, even criminal background check or CPS check or anything? Or are you saying that you wouldn't do anything until she moved out?
I had told them to let me know when she had moved out. But when you say preliminary and background check, who are you asking it on?
Well, Mr. Soto, that's who you were looking at.
Yes, on Mr. Soto, yes, I did do the background check on him.
So are you saying that the only barrier to having placement with Mr. Soto, the father, I guess grandfather at this point, was the fact that Ms. Morales was residing in the home?
The household member.
Objection, speculation. If there was no home study done in return, she can't say that's the only reason why placement could or could not occur.
You're also, I'm going to add a relevancy objection. The point of this hearing is termination of rights, and the children are already with family.
They're not with family, they're with fictive kin.
I'm gonna sustain Ms. Swallow's objection and on speculation. So please ask your next question, Mr. Finkel.
Did Mr. Soto, my client, give you the names of any other relatives?
Yes, he did.
And did you investigate them?
Typically, we start off with the first person and then go down the list.
Okay, so you ruled out the first person. Who was next on the list?
Well, I had totally ruled out Mr. Soto, Mr. Antonio Soto Sr. The next one he gave me Janice Pacheco, who was his niece. She is still currently in high school. Although she's 18, she's still currently in high school. And I spoke with her mother, Rosie, who said she would not be that Janice would not be able to be looked into.
Okay. Was there anybody else?
I then spoke with Rosie after, and she said she was willing to be looked into.
Okay. Anybody else?
That is who I have right now. I had Rosie, Janice, and Antonio Soto.
Okay. Was Mr. Soto already in custody whenever you took over the case?
Yes, he was.
Okay. So he hasn't had any parent-child visits, obviously since then, correct?
Since I've received the case, no.
Okay, I'll pass the witness.
Swallow.
Thank you. Ms. De Los Santos, when did Mr. Soto give you these names?
After the mediation, well, during the mediation, sorry.
And the mediation, how long ago was that?
January, like sometime in January.
Are there any, are you aware if there's any other family members that have been looked into by the department or belong for placement of these children?
I'm not aware.
Okay. And isn't it true that the placement where the children are currently was upon request of the mother?
Yes.
And that was prior to Mr. Soto giving you names?
Yes.
But that doesn't negate the fact that Belong should still look into names of family that the parents request, correct?
That's correct.
But that doesn't guarantee placement, does it?
No, it does not.
There's several factors that have to be looked into, like best interest. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Do you think it would be in these girls' best interest to move them at this time?
No, I do not.
Are they bonded?
They are.
Do you have any intent to separate this sibling group?
I do not.
Have the girls ever been separated?
To my knowledge, no.
Possibly at when Amelia was newborn until autumn came to live with her, till when Autumn was a newborn and Amelia came to live with her, right?
Yes,
But then from that point on, they've been together.
correct.
And there was a question brought up about movement into this home where they're currently at. Do you remember that?
Yes,
Do you remember the circumstances by which the girls were moved from their prior placement?
moved from the foster home to this current placement?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. And so one of those concerns or one of those factors was that's where the mother wanted the children placed, right?
correct,
We had an approved home study, correct?
correct.
The girls were bonded at the prior placement, correct?
Yes, to my knowledge, yes.
But then there's some health concerns arose. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay, and what were those health concerns?
Autumn had some little bumps on her, and that's really what I knew at that time.
Okay. Did the current placement take care of that?
Yes, they did.
And have they been meeting all of her needs
Yes, they have been.
medically
Medically, yes.
and educationally?
Educationally, yes.
And is she receiving any services at this time?
Autumn, no,
Do
not
you
really.
believe it's in Autumn's best interest that Mr. Soto's parental rights are terminated?
Yes, I mean, he hasn't made any changes. I haven't received any information to confirm that he has started any services. She's bonded really well.
Okay, and Mr. Soto is currently incarcerated, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so, and that's not this child's fault.
No, it's not.
And these proceedings aren't put on hold because a parent decides to engage in criminal activity.
Correct.
Okay, and she deserves permanency.
She does.
Are there any barriers to permanency at this time?
Nope, other than just getting the family licensed if they want to be.
Is the department's plan adoption by the current placement?
Yes,
And you believe that to be in this child's best interest?
I do.
Thank you. I pass the witness.
Do you know what the father's position was regarding placement with the Manriquez?
No,
I'll pass the witness, David Rust.
All right, Mr. Finkel, witnesses from you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to call Beatrice Burnell.